Cool. It is week 7 and we are going to leave the algebra kind of in behind a little bit, and we're going to focus on the geometry that you're going to work with this year in 8th grade, and it is similar to the geometry that you're going to get to do in high school. It's just sort of like an intro or a preview, okay? So that's why it just says a taste of geometry. So this isn't everything that you're going to do, when you're older or whatever, but it's going to be something like that, okay? So what are we going to do? Well, let us start with talking about two-dimensional space and circles, okay? Okay, so two-dimensional pretty much just means flat, okay? So like there's nothing popping out at you in space. It's just something like a circle. A circle is something flat, and when you are studying circles, there's two different things you can find. You can find something called the circumference of the circle, and you may have learned this in the past or remember, but circumference is a fancy word for perimeter. And perimeter. Okay, so for perimeter, remember back in the elementary school, that just means the distance around. Okay, so it's trying to find how you go around the circle and how long that is. And there's a formula for it. The formula is circumference equals 2 pi r. So the only algebra involved here, guys, is that I'm using letters in my equation, just like we've been using letters all summer. So this letter represents circumference. This r represents radius. Now, do you know what a radius of a circle is? Well, I hope so. But if not, it's drawn right over here for you. It's halfway across the circle. It's from the center to the side of the circle. That is your radius. So all that you have to do is understand that you look for that number, you plug it into this equation, and then we just type it into the calculator, okay? Now, pi, you probably have heard of that number or seen that number, and there's some people out there in the world that have memorized that number out to a lot of decimal places. It's a decimal that never stops. I want you to round pi to 3.14. So if you have a calculator on your phone or at home, now's the time to get that out and get that ready. And what we're going to do, and I'll put my calculator right here, what we're going to do is just type in the necessary information, okay? So how does that work? So that means that like what I'm about to type in is the number 2 times pi. Now, how do I know that it's times? Well, when things are together and there's no plus or minus, there's like an invisible dot between them. So it is 2 times pi. So instead of pi, I'm going to put 3.14 times the r. And in this problem, the r is 8.9. So I'm just going to type all that in to my handy dandy calculator here. So 2 times 3.14 times 8.9. And I'm going to get 55.892. So that will be my answer, 55.892. All right, cool. So that is the distance around this circle. Now, besides just finding the distance around, you could also find the distance inside, or the amount of area inside the circle. So all of this. So the formula for area is pi r squared. And I'm just reading back here, look at my directions, find the area of the circumference. I think I meant the area and the circumference of the circle. I just did circumference on this one. I'm going to do just area on this one so that you can have the two formulas, okay? So if you want, I tell you what, come back here and cross all those words out. How about that? Find the circumference of the circle, and here we're just going to find the area, okay? All right, so how do we find the area of this? Well, we have to do pi times r squared. Now, in this picture, it's a little deceiving because r is, remember, only halfway across the circle. This 24 is the whole way across the circle, and I know that because the solid line goes all the way across. So based on that, guys, how much is the radius? Well, halfway across of 24 would be 12. Just half of 24 is 12. So my r is 12. So what I'm going to do is, in the place of pi, I'm going to put that number 3.14. And then my r is 12, and I'm going to square that. Okay, do you remember what it means to square? Well, you just multiply that number times itself. So it's 12 times 12. And some of you already know that, right? 12 times 12 is 144. And I'm going to times that by 3.14. So back to my calculator. Let me hit clear. And it's 3.14 times 144. And I get 452.16. 452.16. And that is how much area is on the inside. So if you want to label that, you actually can label it as meters squared. That's something that your teacher will talk to you more about in class. I don't want to really get into it now, but that's just a unit of measure when you are doing area. Okay, you put a little exponent of 2 there. All right, so that would be the answer. Now find the perimeter of the following. Okay, well, if it's a rectangle, do y'all remember perimeter? Well, there's no, I guess we could write a formula for it, but we don't have to, because perimeter is just all the way around. So if this is 2.14, then we know over here is also 2.14, because that's what a rectangle is, right? The opposite sides are congruent. So if the bottom is 1.9, then I know the top is 1.9, and I just need to add all that together. So the top plus the bottom plus the side plus the other side, and that's what I'm going to type into my calculator. 1.9. Feel free to hit pause and type these in. Feel free to try to race me. A lot of people are faster than me at typing these in. And that's it. 8.6 is what my calculator got. 8.6, okay? And this says feet right here, FT for feet, so I'll keep the same unit of feet right there. Okay, and then what about area of a rectangle? Well, area of a rectangle, y'all might remember, it's just base times height. Some teachers in the past might have shown you length times width. These are the same thing. The length and the width, the base and the height, that is the same thing. So when I look back over here at my picture, the base, I might call that the base, and the height, I might call that the height. So it just tells me to multiply them together, okay? Base times height. So 1.9 times 2.4. So get your calculator and let's math that out. 1.9 times 2.4. And we're going to get 4.56. And once again, this was area, and so whenever we put our feet on this one, we put the little 2 up there as the unit of measure, feet squared, or square feet. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much it. Now, if I were you, I'd go back and box the important formulas. That was an important formula. That was the formula. There was no formula here. It was just adding around. But area of a rectangle, that was important. So it's important what the shape is, and then it's important what it's asking you to find, and there's all these different formulas for it. Okay? So let's come down to three-dimensional space. Now 3D just means that you take a flat object and you give it height. And once you create height, you have a three-dimensional figure. This is what you see in the real world, right? Like an ice cream cone or a can of beans, I don't know, or a basketball. So those are the things that you can see in the real world. So you'll be talking about volume of those, and volume just means how much you can hold, okay? So if, like, pretend I was to pour water into this cone, how much water could it hold? So what you hold is your volume. And there are special formulas for these. So I'm going to write the formulas down that are actually on the formula chart for the state of Texas, for the STAR test or for the EOC. That way when you see these from me, they'll be the same ones that you see from your teacher, which will be the same ones that you see at the end of your test, okay? So the cone, I'm looking up the formula right now because people write things differently. So volume of a cone, we're going to write that as 1/3 big B h. Okay, so volume equals 1/3 times big B times h. Now, you're going to have to know what big B is, okay? So the big B has a meaning. We'll put a little thing up here. Big B means area of the base. So a little bit of thought is required here because you have to look at your picture to go, okay, what is the base? And then find the area of that and then stick it into that formula, okay? So, and that's a V for volume, by the way. It's not a R. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, let's look at our picture. Let's start with big B, okay? Over here, the big B is the base. It's what you're sitting on, which is a circle, okay? And if I need the circle, the area of the circle, because that's what it says right there, I need to look above and steal that formula. So the area of a circle is pi times r squared. So big B in this problem is this formula. So it's almost like a sneaky formula inside a formula. So I have to find this first. Then I'm going to plug that number in over there. So what is the r in the picture? Well, look at that circle on the bottom. The r is 7, so it's just pi times 7 squared. Remember, pi is 3.14. And then what's 7 squared? Well, that's 7 times 7, or 49. So I'm going to take my calculator and type in those numbers. 3.14 times 49. And with those numbers, I get 153.86. That is the number, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to go in the place of big B. All this work was just for big B. So 153.86 is going right here. So the 1/3 I can recopy times 153.86. Was that what it was? Yes, okay, good. And then times the h. Now, what is the h in this problem? Well, h just means height, right? That makes sense, h for height. And the height is just how tall the ice cream cone is, and that would be 14. So now you get to just type all of this in. So it's going to be our 153.86 that we had times 14 times 1/3. You can do multiplication in any order you want. So I'm going to just leave this on my screen and do times 14 just so I don't have to retype it. And then I'm going to do times 1/3, okay? So how do you times it by 1/3? Times 1 divided by 3. 1/3 is just 1 divided by 3, guys. And so I'm getting 718 point something. What was that? 0.013. 0.013. So this is my volume. Now this was measured in kilometers. km is for kilometers. And you don't leave it as just a kilometer. You don't put a squared on it because that's if you're in two-dimensional space. But now we're doing a 3D object, so you actually put a little 3 up there as your exponent for cubic kilometers. So anytime you're doing volume, that is the notation that you use when you label your units. Okay? So now let's do volume of a cylinder. Okay? The volume of a cylinder is very similar to the one we just did. It's the same thing, but without the 1/3. So it's big B times h. Big B means the same thing here that it did above, okay? It does mean the same thing there. So now, let's come over here in this problem. What is the big B in this problem? Well, the base is what you're sitting on. So the base is a circle again. So I'm going to follow all the same stuff I did up here. So the base is a circle. So area of a circle is pi r squared. And pi is 3.14. And what's my r? Be careful, my r is not 20, guys. That's all the way across. My r can only go halfway across, so my r is a 10. It's half of that number. So it's 10 squared, okay? Now 10 squared, what's 10 times 10? Well, that's 100. So now I'm going to grab my calculator and I'm going to type that in. You may already know it if you understand quick ways to multiply by 100, which a lot of people do. but if not, just type it in. It's 314, okay? So volume in this problem is going to be the big B is 314 times the h. Well, the h is how tall this is, just like above. And so we're going to go times 8, and I'm getting 2512. And this was kilometers again, and it's cubed again because it is volume. Okay, now the last volume formula that we are going to talk about is volume of a sphere. Now, volume of a sphere is kind of weird, but it's also kind of easy at the same time. So it looks weird and it looks harder than the other ones, but it's really not. 4/3 power cubed. Okay, so the way we're going to write that is 4/3 times pi times r to the 3rd power. Okay, so like I said, it looks difficult, but here's what's cool about it. There's no big B. Like, you don't have to do 2 equations in one. All you have to do is find r from your picture and plug it in. So if I look over here, my r is already drawn. It's 1.7. So then I just recopy all this. So it's going to be 4/3 times pi, and what's pi? 3.14 times r from my picture to the 3rd power. So the hardest part of this might be doing this over here. So let me show you what I would do. I would first type in 1.7 to the 3rd. Now, if you have a fancy calculator that can do that, great. If not, it just means that you have to do what I have to do over here, which is 1.7 times itself 3 times. So 1.7 times 1.7 times 1.7. That's what that equals. So this number over here is 4.913. Then I'm going to multiply that by 3.14. And then I'm going to take that number and multiply it by 4 divided by 3. So times 4 divided by 3 equals. So I'm getting 20, oh man, what did I get? 20.57. If I went too fast, go back and watch me type it in again, and then you try to type it in and see if we get the same thing. And then that would be your unit of measure, inches cubed. Okay, cool. So that's volume for all 3 of those shapes. Hopefully that's not too terrible. And what you're going to do now is we're going to talk about surface area, and you don't actually have to do surface area for all 3 of these, okay? I left a spot for it, but in the 8th grade, you don't have to know this one. You won't need this till high school. I'm actually just going to write it right here. High school. That's when you'll do surface area of a cone, but you will do surface area of the other 2. So what is surface area? Well, imagine this, okay? The surface area is if I told you to pick up this can or pick up this ball. It's everything that your hands could possibly touch. So your hands could touch the top, they could touch the sides, they could touch the bottom. But could your hands touch the stuff on the inside? Well, no, not unless you opened up the can. Same thing with the ball. You could touch everything on the outside of a ball, but unless you like macheted it open and tried to touch the inside, you're not getting inside that ball. So think of it as the outside, right? Everything on the outside that you can touch, that is surface area. Now, they have their own equations for surface area, right? Okay, so surface area of a cylinder is going to be, it looks really horrible, but we're going to talk about it. We're doing total surface area. So TSA is how I'm labeling it. That's probably how your teacher's going to label it, total surface area. So it's going to be, what are we doing? Cylinder surface area. Okay, we're doing that. And so it is 2 pi RH plus 2 pi r squared. Do not freak out on me right now. I know that's a large formula and you're like, what? Okay, but it kind of makes sense because your teacher's going to get into exactly why it makes sense. But this part back here is you adding the top and the bottom together. 2 circles, because that's what the top and the bottom are, and then this accounts for that middle weird section right here. So this is just putting together the pieces of the top, the bottom, and that middle, and it turns into this formula. They will explain better why when you're in class, okay? I promise. But in the meantime, let's try to work this out. So you just have to be able to look at your picture and know what is my R and what is my H, and then we plug it all in. So what is the R in this problem? Well, we already did it back here. The R was 10 and the H was 8. So I'm just going to start plugging in numbers right underneath here. So I recopy the 2 times the pi. Now what is pi? 3.14, okay, times the R is a 10, times the H, which is 8, and then plus 2 again, pi again, and then R squared. Okay, so R was 10, so 10 squared goes here. So I recommend that with our calculator that you just do this in 2 separate pieces. So I'm going to do all of this together, and then I'll go do all of the other part together. So 2 times 3.14 times 10 times 8. And for all of this, I am getting 500, I hate that it disappears, 502.4. Plus, now I'm going to come over and do everything on the other side of the plus sign. So see how PEMDAS never goes away? I told you guys, PEMDAS never goes away. And I'm having to do that right now. I do all the times, and then over here I do all the times, and then I'm going to add them together at the end. So here we go. 2 times 3.14 times, okay, what is 100 squared? Well, 100 times 100, oh, I answered it before I got to ask it, my bad. 10 times 10 means 100, so that's what's going there. So over here I'm getting 628. Now I put those two together at the very end, so 628 plus 502.4, and I get 1130.4. And this was surface area, so we get to use the little 2 as our unit of measure, the little squared up there, kilometers squared. So that would be our answer, guys. That's not a decimal. There we go. So 1130.4 kilometers squared. That is ginormous, by the way. I'm not sure what that picture could be because kilometers are like a unit of measure kind of close to miles. And yikes. I don't even know. I can't imagine anything that big, but whatever. This makes more sense. You know, this would be like a small, maybe like a tennis ball is kind of what this one would be like, 1.7 inches. So maybe, yeah, that would be like a tennis ball. So let's do surface area for a sphere. So the formula for that, surface area, you know what? You don't even have to do that. Hey, look out. Okay, that's another thing that's not going to happen until high school. High school. So what I want you to do is to look at your practice problems and see which of those that you can do. And I actually made the worksheet before I checked this out. So if I asked you a question, like if I said do the surface area of a cone, I don't want you to do the surface area of a cone. I want you to write me a note that says, nope, not yet, lady, not until high school, something like that. But if I asked you any of these other things, so any of these 4 or any of the stuff above, then yes, those I definitely want you to do. And then get your calculator charged up, ready to go, and then watch the solutions video when you're finished.